Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today in our InfoSec seminar, organized by the Information Systems Security and Assurance Management Department in Mahalshan School of Management. We begin our October InfoSec seminar by acknowledging that although this seminar is being held virtually, Concordia University of Edmonton is located on Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many indigenous peoples, including Cree, Salto, Blackfoot, Métis, and the Nakota Sioux people. We respect and acknowledge this. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Barbara Van Engen, the Vice President, Academic and Provost, Dr. Sharif Al-Barrad, the Interim Dean of Management, and Dr. Andreas Gluzo, the Deputy Provost, who have joined us today for this great InfoSec seminar. Today, we are pleased to have to introduce our guest speaker, Gabi Gamara, to give us an interesting talk about geopolitical tensions and cybersecurity, strategic insights for Canadian organizations. Gabi is a professional with a solid foundation in project management and a diverse academic background, including a master's degree in international studies from the University of Montreal. She pursued her passion for cybersecurity by earning a certificate in applied cybersecurity from McGill University. Recently joining the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity, she now applies her analytical expertise to combat cybersecurity threats and advice on cyber defense capabilities. Thanks, Gabi, for being with us today and sharing your experience with our audience. Just two quick notes. During the presentation, microphones will be turned off to avoid interrupting the speaker. At the end, we will have 10 to 15 minutes for questions, and the microphones will be turned on. Please limit yourself to one question to give opportunity to other participants to ask. If we have enough time, please feel free to re-ask again. At the end, I will share the registration and feedback form with you. Please ensure you provide your name, email address, and a brief feedback so we can send your certificate of attendance. Thank you. The floor is yours, Gabi. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Dr. Adda. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today. Like Dr. said, my name is Gabi Gamara. I am Cybersecurity Technical Advisor at the Cyber Center and currently working more in detection and defense. I'm going to talk about an important topic that I think all cyber defenders should know, and is the geopolitical aspect and the impacts in the cyberspace. So before I get into the subject, I would like to introduce who we are. For those who are not familiar with us, the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity, or the Cyber Center, as we call it for short, is centered under the umbrella of the Communication Security Establishment, known as CSE, which is a national cryptologic agency in Canada. The Cyber Center was created about 5 years ago with the objective to create leadership in collaboration between different levels of governments and international partners. And it was created by joining the IT security branch from CSC, part of Shared Service Canada, and the Cyber Incident Response Center for the Public Safety. So all the cyber experts across governments are now in one organization. And this means that we are Canada's authority on cybersecurity, and that single source of expert advice, guidance services, and support from the Government of Canada. So without further delay, let's go into our topic. As observed in the latest years, the confluence of geopolitical dynamics and are continuously reshaping the cyber threat landscape. Malicious cyber tools are used by nation states to achieve geopolitical goals. And these years, we will witness a series of elections at the local, national, and supranational levels across various regions. And these are important events because the leaders emerging from these elections will play a crucial role in shaping international relations in the remaining of this decade. The policies and decisions that comes with this will influence the cyberspace. And A clear example is in the military conflict in the Eastern Europe. The outcome of these elections will determine whether a new administration in the US or in Europe will maintain their financial and military support to Ukraine, potentially altering the course of this conflict. Moreover, there is a high risk of escalation in the current tensions in the Middle East and a spilled-over effect into other countries. And last, the trade and technological competitions between global powers, particularly talking about China and US, continue to intensify rivalries and distrust and could further complicate the geopolitical landscape. And as a result, see more confrontation in the cyberspace. So let's see how these current tensions impact the cyberspace. Nation states use malicious cyber activity as a tactic for subversion and power projection. Cyber activity has become a tool to influence events without escalating to open conflict and support conventional warfare operations. In the absence of direct hostilities, state-sponsored threat actors are developing the ability to disrupt the critical systems and communication networks. They also exploit social division, spread disinformation, and weaken democratic institutions. State-sponsored cyber threat actors will use ransomware and other tactics to impersonate other cyber threat actors and obfuscate the origins of their intentions and their cyber operations to avoid attribution. For example, in the case of Iranian-linked threat actor accused targeting the email accounts of US electoral candidates, experts suggest that in many ways their approach to influence US electoral system mirrors that of Iran-linked threat actor. So they are trying to impersonate to avoid attribution. And geopolitical competition in the cyberspace puts everyone at risk. The cyber attacks have expanded, targeting not only those states in direct confrontation, but also allies countries or even members of international organizations as NATO. So an example is in the attack of the European CASAT satellite internet provider that resulted in a significant outage in several European countries. So while the cyber threat activity in this conflict has been predominantly focused to target Ukrainian, several incidents have spilled over into other countries, and the threat of the spillover effect from these cyber operations remains a pressing concern for the international community. And this is an interesting table since it shows in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war, the military operations in orange, as you can see, and the cyber attacks in blue from February to May 2022. And as we can observe, during this period of time, state-sponsored cyber threat actors have conducted several disruptive and destructive cyber attacks against Ukrainian targets, including DDoS attacks and deployment of wiper malware against various sectors, the sectors which were government, finance, and energy. So what we can observe is that the cyber operations have often coincided with conventional military operations. And what are the implications for cybersecurity? Geopolitical tensions have impacted cybersecurity, presenting a more complex threat surface with more skilled threat actors and increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. As the motivations and sophistication of cyber threat actors evolve, we see also new trends in their behavior. We also observe new tactics and techniques develop a new malware created for specific targets as geopolitical conflicts arise. For example, the Whisper malware that was first identified in January 2022 during the cyber attack on Ukrainian government IT systems, it is a two-stage malware, delivering a combination of bootloader corruption that will exhibit a fake ransomware node, and it has ransomware-like capabilities. But in fact, it was designed to destroy the data of the infected target. So this is just one example. There are 8 tracked malware families that has been used for destructive activity against Ukraine. And in times of geopolitical tension, we also see the emergence of new cyber threat actors groups. As we have assess they are not equal in terms of capability and sophistication. They have a range of resources, training, and support for their activities. While there are interactions among different threat actors in the cyberspace, there are two in particular that are of interest for this subject. The state-sponsored cyber threat actors operating on behalf of nation states are frequently the most sophisticated and responsible for the advanced persistent threats, with dedicated resources and personnel and extensive planning and coordination. The activities may include espionage against governments, organizations, and individuals, prepositioning on or disrupting critical infrastructure, influencing and shaping public discourse. So another group worth to mention are hacktivists, ideologically motivated and generally lower in sophistication. Hacktivists alongside terrorist groups often rely on widely available tools that require little technical skills to deploy. Their actions often have no lasting effects on their targets beyond reputation. However, at times, these actors have been able to inflict financial damages or attempted to cause physical damages on their targets, as seen in the case of the pro-Russian hacktivist group known as People's Cyber Army of Russia, that has claimed to be behind attacks on Texas and Indiana water treatment processing plants. A notorious threat actor that all cybersecurity defenders need to be aware of is Tifo. It's China's state-sponsored cyber threat actor. CSC joined CISA to publish an advisory released on February this year, indicating that Tifo has been prepositioning themselves on U.S. critical infrastructures network to enable disruption or destruction of critical services in the event of increased geopolitical tension with the U.S. and its allies countries. So if we go back for a second to the geopolitical context as the result of the elections in the U.S. And may also in Taiwan, as is a strategic interest for China, this may influence the dynamics between these two states. And so we may see more confrontation in the cyberspace to avoid direct conflict. So the primary tactics that we observe of this threat actor is the leaving of the land, using built-in network admin tools to perform activities, avoid detection by blending with normal Windows systems and network activity, and control or sabotage of water supply and other utilities that can have severe consequences for public health and safety. The Cyber Center assessed that the threat to Canada's critical infrastructure for this state-sponsored actor is lower than in the US, but due to the cross-border interoperability, it is likely that Canadian critical infrastructure will suffer collateral damage, referring to the spillover effect that I mentioned at the beginning. So a couple of trends relevant to mention about cyber threat actors is in the last years, ideologically motivated groups that take sides in a geopolitical conflict has proliferated. Unlike state-sponsored actors, they operate independently and their activity is less predictable, which is not good for cyber defenders. They frequently target critical infrastructure like transportation. For example, in 2023, in response to Canada's support for Ukraine efforts in the war, non-state threat actor named no-name 05716 claimed responsibility for a distributed denial of service attack on the websites of several Canadian critical infrastructure targets. And the group has gained authority for their involvement in Project Dosia, an initiative aimed at executing large-scale DDoS attacks against entities supporting Ukraine, predominantly NATO member states. The Cyber Center has observed some cases where state-sponsored cyber threat activity and cybercrime overlap. And this activity ranges from state-sponsored threat actors tasking cyber criminals to achieve strategic goals or fulfill intelligence requirements to state-sponsored cyber actors engaging in cybercrime outside of their official capacity for personal profit. We assess some nation states very likely act as cybercrime safe shelters from where cyber criminals based within their borders can operate against their targets with immunity. Sponsor cyber threat actors consider critical infrastructure a legitimate target during geopolitical conflict, posing risks to national security by potentially disrupting the delivery of services and products. The rise in cyber threat activity in critical infrastructure is expanding the cyber threat surface, particularly as more assets become internet connected. And this table shows us the history of state-sponsored activity against operational technology. As we observe, many of these attacks target energy and power supply, and most recently, we observe an interest in the water supply systems and critical infrastructure supply chain. When talking about critical infrastructure, we need to address the threats to operational technology. Digital advancements in OT, which integrate information technology, are providing cyber threat actors with opportunities to access or disrupt OT systems by exploiting the increased computing power and connectivity. Threat actors can compromise OT networks by first compromising the internet-facing IT network and exploiting the connection between them. This is particularly true for critical infrastructure like power grids and transportation systems, which are prime targets for state-sponsored cyber attacks. So these OT networks monitor and control large industrial assets, making them strategic targets. And another important topic here in connection with critical infrastructure is the supply chain. So cyber threat actors are increasingly target software tools and services through supply chain compromises. They aim to maximize the number of potential targets, gather sensitive information about the actual targets, and access networks of their targets indirectly. So by compromising a supplier, threat actors can use their trusted relationships to facilitate further compromise against downstream organizations. So some organizations such as managed service providers, MSSPs, have enhanced access to networks of many different clients, allowing threat actors to affect multiple targets through a single compromise. And these threats grow with vendors having elevated access to clients' networks, especially with the rise of cloud-based models. Also, by spreading malware through vendor updates, they introduce vulnerabilities. Attackers also exploit common third-party code used in web services and apps. And when procuring digital products and services, the supply chain risk is not just of the suppliers, but also of the suppliers' supply chain. There has been many well-documented attacks at various points of the technology supply chain that have resulted in the compromise of the end user. State-sponsored threat actors conduct cyber espionage against governments, businesses, and critical infrastructure to advance national strategic objectives. The information of interest they target is military intelligence, academic and property research, personal information of government employees, product formulas, political strategies, affiliation, and communication. Any information giving an advantage in interstate negotiations is a target. In cyber espionage, the goal of the threat actor is to remain undetected for as long as possible in order to acquire intelligence. And cyber espionage can also act as a preliminary step for launching a cyber warfare attack by acquiring the necessary information. Cyber espionage activities are usually categorized as advanced persistent threats, and such attacks are sophisticated and need to be carefully planned and designed by the threat actors to infiltrate an organization and evade detection for long periods of time. So China's state-sponsored threat actors are behind the most sophisticated cyber espionage attacks. Some tactics and trends observed include extensive reconnaissance to learn about the target's organization network, the use of expert phishing, take control of a small office and home office routers, the use of building network tools to avoid detection rather than using specialized malware. And they target trusted service providers to access client information and rapidly exploit zero-day vulnerabilities. And the Cyber Center is also aware of the use of lead commercial cyber tools like Cobalt Strike to target large organizations and critical infrastructure in Canada. Both Metaxploit and Cobalt Strike are in wide use by states and criminal groups to facilitate cyber espionage and ransomware. And last but not least, collecting and encrypting information to use when quantum computers will become available. According to the experts, it will be in around 2030. State-sponsored actors use also this information to advance geopolitical goals, suppress criticisms, and undermine trust by influencing public opinion and amplifying social divisions. This information can mislead citizens, polarize societies, and incite hate and violence. Cyber threats to democratic processes, especially during elections, are increasing, with actors attacking election infrastructure, stealing sensitive information, and infecting democratic institutions with malware. They are also engaging in online influence campaigns to influence voters' opinions and spread disinformation using AI-generated advanced techniques like synthetic content. So, for instance, in April 2022, CSC reported disinformation being spread about Canadian forces members committing war crimes in Ukraine and using fake images to back up false narrative about Canada's involvement in the conflict. So this information has a strong impact on societies, particularly when state-sponsored cyber threat actors exploit the psychological tactics. Alarm users are more likely to click on malicious links after encountering deepfakes or synthetic media. And disinformation tactics that the state-sponsored cyber threat actors use include creating networks of fake personas and websites to lend credibility to their messages. They produce deepfake and synthetic media to mislead viewers, amplify conspiracy theories or shape world views, and post overwhelming amount of content with the same or similar messaging from several inauthentic accounts. This practice, known as astroturfing, creates the impression of a widespread grassroots support or opposition to a message while concealing its true origin. And they also exploit alternative social media platforms with fewer protection to spread their narratives. These methods are designed to manipulate audiences and distort the information environment. Despite the potential creative benefits of generative AI, its ability to pollute the information ecosystem with disinformation threatens democratic processes worldwide. The Eastern European conflict has involved a sustained campaign of disinformation designed to create confusion and interfere with international perception of the world. On March 16, 2022, a deepfake video of Ukrainian President Zelensky was circulated on social platforms, and the deepfake had the president asking Ukrainian soldiers to surrender. So in recent years, generative AI has become increasingly popular as its ability to generate synthetic content, text, images, or videos has become accessible through large tech companies like OpenAI, Meta, or Google. Unfortunately, cyber threat actors are also using these capabilities to generate and amplify disinformation online. And while most social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are making efforts to flag and remove deepfakes from their platforms, they are not always able to detect and remove it before it can be widely circulated. And this task is further complicated by considerations about creativity and freedom of speech. Political parties are themselves using generative AI capabilities as part of their campaigns. For example, to create videos depicting future scenarios if a political rival is elected. While disclaimers are used to identify the video as a deepfake, very little regulation currently exists in Canada and the US on the extent of which generative AI can be used in political advertising. And there is also the social bonnets that can influence and misrepresent popular opinion. Researchers have found that bots accounted for as much as 10% of accounts participants in a conversation on certain topics. So social bonnets are often part of a larger influence campaigns. And we can conclude that generative AI will be increasingly used to automate and augment social bonnet functions further. AI text generators like ChatGPT and Bard are capable of generating paragraphs and coherent text that are virtually impossible to distinguish from human writing. And these generative AI capabilities can be applied to social bonnets to improve their post and make them sound more human. State-sponsored cyber threats are a constant danger to Canada, often part of a larger campaign. These actors target Canada for a variety of reasons, including our association with NATO and G7, and threat exposure is increased due to our global connectivity and our technological integration with our allies. So they target foreign national diaspora groups, activists, and journalists, and use data science to identify and track individuals. The interconnected nature of communication technologies and data processing put Canadian personal information at risk, especially when data is stored in foreign countries. When data is transmitted through or stored on a server physically located in a foreign state, that state can easily compel private organizations to supply this data, threatening the privacy of Canadians. The interconnected nature of communications technology and data processing means that without appropriate safeguards, Canadians' personal information can be compromised when cyber threats actors compromise foreign entities. So state actors also engage in commercial espionage, targeting intellectual property and other valuable business information with the goal of sharing stolen information with a state-owned enterprise and domestic industries in their home country. Commercial and cyber espionage is often part of a broad spectrum of activity that includes intellectual property theft, foreign intelligence operations, covert equipment and materials acquisitions, and even export control violations. If successful, this activity can result in lost revenue, reputational damage, and lost investment for research and development. State-sponsored cyber actors each pose unique strategic threats to Canadian organizations. And it's likely that over the next 2 years, they will continue to target sectors of importance for their own domestic economic development. By adopting the tactics, techniques, and procedures of cyber criminals, state-sponsored cyber actors, they likely attempting to avoid blame and hide their activities. So avoiding attribution makes this more harder to identify. It's a big challenge. Attribution is a big challenge. So that said, the threats from China-sponsored cyber threat actors is very likely the most significant by volume, capability, and assessed intent. They will very likely continue targeting industries and technologies in Canada that contribute to a state's strategic priority. And between 2011 and 2018, sponsored cyber threat actors targeted science and technologies research in 12 countries, including Canada. The industries targeted included maritime technology, vaccine and viruses treatment, information technology, aviation and defense. And the information stolen was very likely intended to support nations' state efforts to secure foreign contracts for their own enterprises and their own research programs. And in 2021 and 2022, we observed state-sponsored cyber threat actors conducting operations for financial gain, very likely in part to alleviate the impact of international economic sanctions. And as mentioned at the beginning, state-sponsored threat actors also use the cyber tools and activities associated with cyber criminals by adopting the tactics and techniques they are avoiding attribution. So without proper safeguards, Canadians are increasingly vulnerable to these sophisticated cyber threats. What actions organizations can take? So the Cyber Center urged provincial, territorial, and municipal governments, as well as critical infrastructure networks defenders, to adopt certain measures. And these ones are the top tips, especially for supply chain threats and operational technology threats in critical infrastructures. So implement application whitelisting, be prepared to isolate critical infrastructure components and services from the internet and internal networks, apply protection at the host level, protect information at the enterprise level, conduct vendor, partner, and other services provided risk assessment, increase vigilance by monitoring networks for unusual activity with a focus on the tactics, technique, and procedures reported by the Cyber Center and its partners, enable logging for better investigation, restrict intruders' movements by focusing on vulnerable entry points, especially third-party systems, enhance your security posture by patching systems. And although disinformation tactics aim to deceive and manipulate critically evaluating content and verifying information with credible sources before sharing it, it can help combat this issue. Key actions include recognizing the risk of disinformation, questioning the source of credibility, thoroughly investigate issues with balanced perspective, thinking carefully before sharing content, and engaging in respectful conversations with your social circle to address potential disinformation. So these steps can help increase resilience against disinformation and slow its spread. And this is a responsibility, especially for academic institutions, to educate, raise awareness and educate students and future cybersecurity professionals. I cannot highlight more the defense in-depth approach when talking about security. The thinking is that if one line of defense is compromised, additional layers exist to ensure that threats are stopped along the way. This multi-layer approach with intentional redundancies increases the security of a system as a whole and addresses many different attack vectors. In this table, you can see the anatomy, and it also includes mitigations at every stage of the attack, and is indicated in a different color. So in the first stage, the threat actor is trying to gain access, and we have account management. Properly managed users and admin accounts with a strong unique passwords and passphrase is a measure. It's first levels of protections when usernames and passwords are compromised. Then we have the multi-factor authentication that will block for further access. And we also have email domain protection to protect domains from email spoofing and phishing, protecting DNS, block access to malicious domains using protective DNS, cybersecurity training, educate employees, and recognize cyber threat like phishing. And this one is very important since technologies like data loss prevention systems represent a layer of defense that can help prevent data loss, but a determined hacker will find a way. And this means that protecting data from being accessed in the first place is a much better solution as a preventive approach. So in the stage where the attacker or the threat actor takes controls, updating and patching and network segmentation to control traffic flow and isolate malware is very important. The principle of least privilege may prevent threat actors from gaining full access to the system. And at the last stage, the backup plan, regularly backup and ensure protections and recovery. Logging and monitoring, as you can see, logging monitoring is all the way since the beginning of the stage to the end. And it will monitor network traffic, will help to establish detect anomalies or abnormal behaviors and take measures. So this is in a nutshell security measures that you can take at every stage, and it shows the defense in depth again approach. There are free solutions to support your cybersecurity plan, such as CIRA, Canadian Shield, a protected DNS service that prevents connections to malicious websites, provided by the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, CIRA. This service uses threat intelligence from the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. DNS is crucial for cybersecurity as 80 to 90% of cyber attacks leverage DNS servers. If compromised, public Wi-Fi DNS servers can redirect you to malicious sites. Canadian Shield is the only free public DNS service that is run by a non-profit agency, does not monetize your data, and is 100% Canadian, ensuring data is subject to Canadian privacy laws. And the way it works is that you can see in the slide, a user clicks on the malicious link. Then the next step, the Canadian Shield DNS server checks the threat list. And next step, the CIRA threat list finds a match with the threat data shared by the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. And the next step, Canadian Shield DNS server prevents users from connecting to the malicious site. So the Cyber Center offers various services, including incident handling, information assurance, cyber defense services, advice and guidance, community building, and threat intelligence. I'm sure that many of you here in the room have heard about and maybe are members of CCCS, and if not, please reach out to us, to our website. And I know that was a lot of information, and I'm happy to take the questions in just a second. But before I wrap up, one thing I would really want to highlight is the importance of the incident reporting. It is completely voluntary for organizations to report a cyber incident to us, but there is an incredible value in reporting incidents to the Cyber Center. You can also request our assistance, and depending on the sensitive or the severity of the incident or triage process, we may be able to get hands-on to help you. For instance, doing some forensic investigation. So thank you for your attention. Now I will open the floor for any question and comments you may have about this presentation.
Thank you so much, Gabby, for this interesting presentation and for all this important information. So I will open the mics now, and I will start with a question from my side. So do we have some cases or examples of a country like who has successfully sued another country for cyber attacks under the international laws?
There are no, actually no, because there has been indictions to individuals or entities, but not to states. It is very complicated, like I said at the beginning, the attribution part, saying who did attribute an attack, a cyber attack, to a nation state. It's very challenging, it's very difficult. There are some techniques that are used, like the forensic investigation, attribution by association, but these are not enough proof in the eyes of the law to pursue another state. at this very moment. And there are some efforts being made, like they are trying to, for instance, United Nations is trying to establish an international treaty about cyber crimes and establish some guidelines. So in what cases or how states should behave in the cyberspace and when behavior is not acceptable, but it's being a challenging right now to move forwards with this, and it's going to take time. So what currently is isolated cases of individuals being indicted or are bringing them to the justice and being pursued with the local laws. So in this case, in Canadian laws, but not at the international level, as far as I know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So time for questions. Yes, please, Ashish, please go ahead.
Thank you, Gabby, for sharing an excellent presentation. The question that I have is of interest is on the supply chain. Canada, especially the Canadian companies, are dependent on a global supply chain with global partners. Now, you suggested that we should continuously audit their systems, and sometimes the number of entities or intermediaries in that global supply chain may be too many. So is there any specific tool or application that you would recommend for reducing the cyber crimes in that global supply chain?
The Cyber Center utilize a tool, which is the risk assessment to assess vendors and suppliers for the government. And it's a model that we share with critical infrastructure and all partners, and we assist them. It's difficult to reduce because, like I said, every organization is going to be responsible of picking up what vendor they want to work with. And nobody else has the responsibility other than the organization itself to assess the vendor in different aspects. And one of these aspects is going to be assessing the cyber maturity of this organization, of this vendor or supplier, and how this handles sensitive information. And this supplier works with other suppliers. So it is important to do an assessment of the supplier, because they can say they can have security measures, but themselves, if they don't apply this with their own suppliers, so it's like the threat is going to persist. It's very complex, but at the same time, is a responsibility to do a threat assessment, risk assessment of every vendor that we work with as much as possible. And there are minimum things like the vendor needs to adhere to the policy, the security policies of your organization, first thing. But then there are other things that need to be studied, like where this supplier is located, and see if there is a geopolitical connection. If you are engaging with a supplier that is located in a country where we have conflict with, and the information, your sensitive information is going to be in transit with this organization, well, there is a high risk that your data is at risk, because it's in a country that is going to be in a country that we have conflicts with, or Canada has conflict with, or in this very moment, Canada has not direct conflicts with any state, but like I mentioned it during the presentation, because of our association with international organizations like NATO, and because our alliances with the US, we are at risk. and we are risk from different states in the scene that are operating in the cyber space at this very moment. So to conclude to this question, I would say risk assessment to suppliers is very important. And yes, there are different tools. And one I can suggest to use to many organizations is what the Cyber Center uses for the government of Canada. That is very adaptable, is flexible, and it provides guidelines to organizations. And at least it's a point of to start with that gives you some ideas or a model of how to proceed.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Any more questions? Like before I take Nitika, please be sure to provide us with your name, email address, and the feedback in the linked form, so we may send your certificate of attendance. So please fill in the form. Yes, Nitika, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Gabby. Thank you so much for this interesting presentation. My question is regarding companies offering critical infrastructure in Canada. So even with all the threat intelligence that is provided by the Canadian Centre of Cybersecurity, we still see critical infrastructure industries being targeted and hit by ransomware or some or the other cyber attacks. So what can be done better in terms of preparation and detection of those cyber attacks in a timely manner? And the other part of this question is what can be done better in terms of communicating that to the external stakeholders?
So for the first part of the question, what critical infrastructures can do better to protect, or as a whole, what can the country do to support them? I'll say that providing information and tools as the Cyber Center does to support critical infrastructure is a start. But then what we need to do is awareness. Awareness for me is where everything starts. The entry point, as I showed in the schema of a cyber state with the stages of an attack, is the access. It all starts with this, because the other things we don't have controls. When we are being in the middle of a cyber espionage and there is a reconnaissance on the critical infrastructure, we don't have any idea this is going on, right? Until the initial access is made. The threat actor trying to get access, and the most of the time they try to get access through spear phishing or phishing attacks. And the way they do this is they investigate the employees, the people around the critical infrastructure, and they're trying to find how they can manipulate this so when to click, because it's the easiest way. It's easier than working in a laboratory, prepare a malware, go through the websites, etc. But doing the phishing step is a point of entry, and is a weakness in most countries, in most organizations, because we lack of awareness of education for employees. And there is also the challenge of the rotation of employees. So you educate by, let's say, periods of time, but it should be a rule that every new employee receive training properly about what is phishing and the threats, because they are the ones that are going to click at some point, and are gonna give the initial access. So I can mention there are many measures that can be used, like in the Defense in Depth program, to protect your systems. But the very entry point is in the social engineering aspect of it, is the front, the people who are there, the employees, those who have an account that has weak passwords, that do not know what is a phishing, do not know why they are receiving emails, strange emails, but are still doing actions on it. So this portion of the population needs to be aware, needs to be educated, needs to have this information. It's very important. So I will focus on this as a first step, and then the rest of it is putting protection at every stage. Approach is defense in depth, because you can have a very strong team to protect your perimeters with firewalls and intrusion detection systems and detecting at the endpoint level. But there is a human aspect in all this, and the human aspect, like I mentioned at the beginning, is in the part that it can be tricked, it can be manipulated, and the best way to combat this is giving information. So that is for this part of the question. And the other one was how we can share this to other stakeholders. Was that the question, Nikita?
Yes, yes.
So I would say cooperation and collaboration with others organizations in your sector is the best way to go. Organizing workshops, associating, discussing of specific threats to your sector is the best way to go. Sharing information, sharing solutions. Because if you keep informed of what's going on, for instance, in the academic sector, then you can't, with other organizations, put in place some measures to protect your specific sector. Every sector faces a different challenge because they hold different type of information and those sensitive information. So for the academic sector, research is a target. The research about technology, about medicines, about biomedicine is a target. So this is information that needs to be protected. It's not the same threats that are going to be facing, for instance, water supply systems. So for that reason, you need to associate, collaborate with other organizations in your sectors and share this information, threat intelligence, where you see the threat actors, what have they done, report, share your indicators of compromise. And this will help your organizations to know how to protect yourself, knowing that there is another threat that is going on. So that is the best suggestion I could have. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful.
Thank you. Any more questions? Any more questions? Yes, Elizabeth, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to ask, like, what are the current trends in cybersecurity when it comes to the most current attack, and what are the most recent antidotes, if you permit me to use that, to kind of use to stop that attack?
The most recent trends right now in Canada. So we observe ransomware is still one of the threats that we see more often. Ransomware and data breaches, and we see this a lot for cyber criminals. That I have not went deeply into this in this presentation because it was more focused on the state-sponsored threat actors. But what we observe currently is that cyber criminals are being now engaged by state cyber threat actors, and they are working together. They're teaming up. So it's going to be very hard now. It is a new trend, and it all comes to the initial point. What is going to happen after the elections? What sides are going to take this state and the other state? What actions are going to take? And so state-sponsored cyber threat actors are prepositioning in advance of these events coming, and they're associating with cyber criminals. These are new trends. So Canada has faced many ransomware attacks in different organizations, as many other states, right? But right now, we see this is very common. So the trends that we observed is that cyber criminals and state-sponsored threat actors are associating, and it's difficult to attribute who did what, who was responsible for what when this is happening. And the other thing we see, the other step we observe is data breaches, and this mostly for cyber espionage campaigns. Part of it is having the data breach, but not for collecting, particularly for collecting money, is because they want to keep this data for specific purposes. What they want is, or know how we do things, what are our technological advancements, and this is for allowing other states to be better positioned in international negotiations or for their own advancements in their own industries. So this is what are we seeing the most in this cyberspace at the moment as threats, and at the same time in the geopolitical landscape. And there was other part of your question. I'm sorry, can you repeat it? Elizabeth?
Yes, I got that. Thank you.
Yes, there was another part of your question that I just I don't know if
Oh,
I
yeah, like the antidote, like the current and like antidote, if I'm able to use that. Like, what are the current anti-attacks that we're building to kind of curb that? But from your explanation, right, it still falls back to some of the recommendations you already gave in the training during your presentation. So yeah, that sounds.
Okay, great. So we'll take one last question from Alfred.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Hi, everyone. So I had a small question regarding, this is regarding reconnaissance, and as an expert, from your perspective, what is your opinion on communication in light of security threats like SS7 attacks and everything? Do you still think communication on normal mobile phones that many corporates hand over to their executives, is that still something that is feasible when it comes to communication security?
For communication security, it's very important that categorize the type of information that is shared. Every organization needs to do this. There are guidelines for this, but every organization needs to do this to precisely protect the data, the organization's data. Categorize what type of sensitivity the information has. Is it sensitive information? And is it unclassified information? Everybody can have access to it, it doesn't matter. Or is top secret information? So every organization needs to do this. Why? Because classifying or categorizing the level of information will allow them also to protect who has access to it, how can be shared this information, how and for with what means. Can it be shared by email? Can it be shared on the phone? With what people in the organization can it be shared or not? And also categorizing the information may discourage threat actors to go to a specific target, because they will know that they do not have as much sensitive information as they think the organization holds. So categorizing the level of information is the way. Yeah.
Right. Like, do you think mobile phones and corporates handing off mobile phones as a communication, primary modes of communication to their C-level executives in light of something like, I think you've heard of the Pegasus attacks and the SS7 attacks. And I think the whole mobile phone platform is generally vulnerable to that sort of attack. So in light of that, do you think, what do you think about it? Are there any protections other than generic administrative controls that can be switched on to like prevent any kind of malicious activity? I mean, it could be as simple as it could be useful for reconnaissance, even if you don't want to have a malicious attack. It can be still useful as a reconnaissance method, right?
It can be used as a reconnaissance method. I'm not an expert in mobile
Right.
communications
I mean,
protection.
I couldn't find a good solution. So like the only thing that I could find, like, okay, we all should switch to pagers or some other form of communication altogether, so as not to be vulnerable to SS7 attacks. But like, I don't know.
It's a very interesting question and in very interesting topic, because we use a lot the mobile phones for work, and we cannot prevent ourselves from transferring a lot of information using the phone, the mobile, and there are definitely some safeguards that can be applied, like at the moment of what type of information you can share. But for instance, we have some that we do not. There are things that we cannot share on the phone. They are just not allowed, and we or we work through we connect through a VPN. We have a special security measures, or profile is separated from the profile work, and it is on our cell phones. So we have to connect especially, and we cannot have an application list. There are many applications that are not allowed. So I would say be careful with the applications you have on your phone. Is the very first step to protect your phone, because when downloading applications, if they are not safe, so you are at risk. Having said that, protect your phone from being lost. That is very important. This phone is like a computer these days. It holds a lot of personal information. So protect with a strong password, not only biometrics, because biometrics has been seen to be hacked as well. So protect your phone as much as possible, but applications at the application level is important. And then once that, I'll say be so very careful of the links you click on your phone. When using the chats or when using Teams event. So yeah, and maybe we have more information on the website. Sorry, cannot give you more details on that.
Thank you so much, Gabby.
Thank you.
So guys, I wanna announce two quick things. We are hosting an alumni cybersecurity panel on Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024 from 6 to 8. So please register using this link. I will share it with you right now. So please register using this link, and also we hope to see you in our next InfoSec seminar on November 6th. On November 6th, we will have Kelvin Ingen, the Chief Technology Officer of F12.net, to give us an interesting talk about the seduction of cyber tools and AI. Are your defenses armed or just for show? Okay, so the next seminar will be on November 6th. Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you next time. And thank you, Gabby, for the interesting talk.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gabby. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.